Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, and I'm going to be leading tonight's discussion on fentanyl. Thank you to all the parents, students, and teachers who have made it a point to take time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight for our Fentanyl Community Forum. Before we get started, I'd like to give a sincere thank you to Susan Marisi and Officer Valerie Rhodes for partnering with us to create this event, and to Goldwater High School for allowing us to use this facility. And this will get an even bigger applause from you. We extend our heartfelt thanks to Sanderson Ford for their generous $1,400 donation to purchase food, okay? And to Costco for their contributions towards water, and to Avenue 27, the school's culinary arts program. How is this? This is special. For creating and preparing all of the food that will be available for free after the event concludes. So that should really... We're honored to have Phoenix Fire Chief Mike Duran with us as well, and I want to sincerely thank him for supporting this critical cause. You know, the Phoenix Fire Department is on the front lines of this fight against the drug crisis, and we're truly grateful for their continued efforts to keep our community safe. So thank you to him. And I'd also like to extend my gratitude to Phoenix Police Assistant Chief Ed DeCastro for joining us tonight, especially during this very, very difficult time for the Phoenix Police Department as we honor the memory of the fallen officer, Zane Coolidge. So if we could just take a minute to remember Officer Coolidge and his family, and Officer Haney also, who was shot as well. You know, when we look at what happened just a week ago, this serves as a reminder of the dangers that all of our officers from every agency face every single day. They leave their homes, they leave their families, and they go out to protect our homes and our families. And sometimes they don't come back. Sometimes they don't come home. And so the Phoenix Police Department's commitment to tackling this issue at this time is a testament to their tireless dedication and hard work. So thank you to the Phoenix Police Department. You know, I want to start off by pointing you to the screen here. This is what's called a heat map, and if it was testing the temperature of Phoenix, the whole thing would be red right now, but that's not what we're talking about. This is actually a map depicting fentanyl-related cases that were submitted to my office, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, from law enforcement agencies across the valley in 2022. And so when you look at the heat map, you can see that there are areas of concentration where the fentanyl cases occurred. So you're looking along a lot of the freeways. You're looking at, you know, I-17, I-10, and then there's a pocket up there in the Southeast Valley. That's 2022. Let's show you what happened just a year later. So those major areas are still there. You can still see them, the I-10, the 17, and the Southeast Valley. But you can see that fentanyl has quite literally infiltrated every single part of the valley. So it's no exaggeration to say that the use and distribution of fentanyl in Maricopa County has exploded. And I want to be really clear. We understand there are people who are addicted to it, but there are also people who are bringing it into our community. And it is, I don't like to refer to it as a drug, it is a poison. So we have been very clear in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, if someone is bringing this poison into Maricopa County, into our community, they are going to be charged and prosecuted. Because we know that drug use and addiction are not isolated issues, but they're catalysts that often lead to a cascade of other criminal activities and also the death of our loved ones. Individuals struggling with addiction are frequently driven to commit other crimes to sustain their dependency, and the cycle of addiction and crime not only endangers the individual, but also threatens the safety and well-being of our entire community. So recognizing that this is all interconnected, my office is profoundly committed to taking proactive measures, not just reactive measures, aimed at preventing addiction in the first place, and that's why we're here tonight. People should be able to learn from their mistakes, especially young people, teenagers, not die from them. So use the information you'll hear tonight from this panel to talk to your loved ones, especially youth. You owe it to them to have a conversation. And it may not be an easy conversation for you to have, but we're going to give you some ideas about things you can say, because this is something that you can't ignore and it will go away. It's not going away. And if you ignore it and don't educate other people about it, you don't educate your kids about it, I don't want them to find out the hard way, because the hard way can be a very permanent way. So remember, this is not a drug that we're dealing with. It is a poison. It is unlike anything we have ever seen. I know you look at me and you go, well, if she's the Maricopa County Attorney, she's a politician. I'm actually a career prosecutor. So I have been prosecuting cases in this valley since 1992. And you're sitting there going, how old is she? I'm 56. I'll be 57 next month. So save you the math. School's over. I'll make it easy. So I've been prosecuting cases since 1992, and I remember when methamphetamine became sort of the drug that we saw the most of, and we really kind of thought that that was sort of the apocalyptic or the end of time drugs. And it's nothing compared to what we were seeing with fentanyl. So please keep that in mind. It is incredibly destructive. So before we get started with our panel, though, I would like to welcome Supervisor Clint Hickman from the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors to the stage. You know, the Board of Supervisors is the body that oversees the county, and so I work very closely with them. I represent them as well. And I can tell you that the board has been very dedicated to looking at this issue, to making sure they do everything they can to keep this county safe as possible from this invasion of this poison. But Clint in particular has been very vocal about his desire to make sure that we do everything we can. So he is actually over this area, right? This is your area that it's his territory. But he's also a tremendous advocate. So with that, I'll give you Clint Hickman.
So because I'm just a little bit older than our county attorney, I now have to wear these. So thank you, Rachel. I'll just go back a little bit in history of the story that I have and why I'm so passionate about this. For over 20 years, our family business, Hickman's Eggs, have employed inmates. We have an inmate work crew. And I started to get involved in just the madness that is drug abuse and what's going on in our community during the meth years. I was on the Anti-Meth Council, and we rolled out a public awareness nationwide. If you remember, there used to be billboards with what meth does to you. Remember those billboards? And I was very proud of that because it's a brand. It's like, why would you do this to yourself? Look, you're pilling at your skin and everything. And I thought it was really bad. It was devastating some of our workers' families. And I thought that was bad. And while working with that, and when fentanyl has come on. Now that I'm in a public service role, fentanyl is correct. You don't call it a drug, kids, everybody. Don't call it a drug. It's definitely not a recreational drug. What it is poison. I've been trying to rebrand that. Kids understand poison. They are, unfortunately, in our schools, they are surrounded by alcohol and drugs, especially in the high school. But this fentanyl is reaching into grade schools. It's reaching into nursing homes. It's reaching into the streets. That heat map is just devastating to me. Look what has happened in a year. So kids, when I grew up, there was, and some of the adults here, remember Scared Straight for us adults, like, don't go to prison, this is what you could see. How quaint now, how quaint that seems to be. We had Nancy Reagan saying, just say no, right? Just say no to drugs. Well, that sounds kind of like a lecture to the kids. So here's what I'm telling kids right now. This is an adult. I'm begging you, please say no. Please say no to that. That's hard to do when a friend is offering something to you, right? But I'm begging you to. Please say no, because the effects are devastating almost immediately to both you and your family. And there is nothing like, talk about scared straight, we have the medical examiner's office. You know what scares people straight? When you go into the medical examiners and you see 3 teenagers with blue toes because of fentanyl. I am going to read you some statistics that are incredibly troubling. In 2020, when I became chairman, the world was a different place, and I talked about the plan for the county, and the word COVID-19 and pandemic was not said. It wasn't here, okay? And then it happened, and it changed our society and our world just in a 1-year time period. I became chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors in 2023, so a little over a year and a half ago. I'm no longer chairman because we switch it out every year. And in my chairman's address, I talked about where the county was going, and then I said, you know, in 2020, we didn't see this coming, the words pandemic or COVID-19. I'm going to make a crystal ball guess, and I'm going to guess what I think we all should be absolutely scared and working on of changing our society, and I said fentanyl. Now, look what has transpired. I said fentanyl because about a month later, I went to a treatment center and said, what do you guys need? Now, this is a nonprofit, but they build treatment centers, and I said, does the county need to come and build more buildings? And they said, if we start building more treatment centers without an awareness and an education campaign, we will never stop building treatment centers. This drug is so addictive. The only reason why we wouldn't build a lot of treatment centers is because you're on fentanyl for maybe a couple months and then you're dead. There's no one left to treat. And we're seeing that, what's going on in the medical examiner's office. So, kids that are in the audience, you are our leaders on this. Your parents have brought you here to hear what is going on, and it is an epidemic. And our kids need to be the leaders in this. The kids need to be able to watch their classmates and keep them away from this, much less not do it yourself. But you need to become and trained as first responders, as I think the panel is going to get into. But here's some sobering statistics. All right. From teens to seniors, it doesn't matter your age, race, or socioeconomic situation, no one is safe from fentanyl. Fentanyl deaths have increased by 5,400% since 2015. 63% of all drug-related deaths involve fentanyl. That's even more by huge numbers than methamphetamine is. On average in Maricopa County, almost 4 people die every day due to fentanyl. 12 small grains of this lethal drug can kill an adult male. That's how lethal the drug is. Maricopa County is putting so much of its resources into combating the fentanyl crisis to protect our kids. Public health, our public health team, has been funding our drug treatment partners to help people recover from opioid addiction. Our Office of the Medical Examiner has been tracking fentanyl deaths to provide vital data to policymakers and health partners who are at the front lines of this fight. The Sheriff's Office has been arresting drug dealers and seizing millions, not some, but millions of fentanyl pills. The County Attorney's Office has been prosecuting and putting thousands of fentanyl cases into the courts and putting fentanyl dealers behind bars. And our county attorney is doing a wonderful job with that. We stand behind the guys in blue, the ladies in blue. They know that it's devastating, and we have to get these people off the streets, and then we have to get them to quit killing our citizens. Parents are going to learn tonight how to protect their children from fentanyl. And for the teens, I hope this forum shows you just how truly this drug is to prevent you from using it or other drugs that could be laced with it without you even knowing. I think you guys have some ability to show some pictures of what they're using and marketing this drug with. So I am a guy with cheer in my heart, jovial. I usually make speeches. I try to go towards the funny side, but I'm sorry, everybody. You're here tonight, and it's not because of my comedy routine. You're taking time away from maybe some of your other kids, some of you, maybe a spouse. It is so important. It's so gratifying for us that are battling this, that you are willing to be educated about this, willing to hear about it, and hopefully when you walk out these doors, I really want you to be scared about it, because that's what we're dealing with every day. So thank you for the attendance. Thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen of the police departments, the prosecuting team. We all have to work together against this cartel madness. And we need to get it stopped. So again, thank you for welcoming me to Goldwater, and appreciate you being here tonight.
Well, now I would like to invite Vanessa and Gus Ayala to the stage. We invited Vanessa and Gus to come today to talk about what happened to their son, Noah. And so I will turn it over to you.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here to share a bit of our story. And what family kind of goes through in this process. We gathered today to confront a devastating reality, one that has taken far too many lives and continues to grow in a silent destruction. We are here to talk about the epidemic of the synthetic opioid overdose deaths. This is a crisis that knows no boundaries, geographic, economic, or demographic. It has affected families in every corner of society, including my own. My son, Noah Ayala, was one of those victims. His life was taken by synthetic opioids on March 17th of this year, and it was the very first time he ever used them. One moment of vulnerability, one bad decision, and he is gone forever. Noah was a beacon of joy and laughter. Being able to coach him from the age of 9 in flag football was the greatest experience and blessing as a father could ever have. We won our last championship 2 weeks before his passing, so for him, sports was his outlet to be himself. It was his love, his passion 24/7, along with playing video games, of course, which I morning. conversations that, see, most men hang around on the weekends with their best friend, and I was hanging out with my best friend. Pain of not being able to have the opportunity to come and save the day, like my son would expect his dad would do, because it's no answers, or without even able to absorb that grief that bestowed upon them. Every day we see our son at his resting place, missing him, remembering him, enjoying the memories we were able to experience. But the one thing that we can't do until we meet him on the other side is hug him, hear him, see him, or go play catch, or go see him making a touchdown for the game, a game winner or an interception, run it back for a touchdown to win the game. We lost a son, a future scientist, a family tree branch, and a piece of our hearts. I share this painful truth, not for sympathy, but because it's a story that reflects the horror of this epidemic. It's a reality that no family should ever have to face, yet so many do. In a world where fentanyl and other synthetic opioids are so powerful and so deadly, it only takes one. This tragedy is not unique. In recent years, synthetic opioids, particularly fentanyl, have reshaped the landscape of drug use and addiction in terrifying ways. You've probably heard this before, and if you haven't, I'll reiterate it. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. It's cheap, and as a result, a lot of people's lives have been lost. But as we talk about numbers, and let's make something clear. Behind every statistic, there is a name, a face, a family. My son was not just another number. Neither are the countless others, as they have been taken away from us as well. Each of these individuals had dreams, hopes, and a future that was tragically cut short. Their stories need to be heard, and their deaths cannot be in vain. What's particularly heartbreaking is that many of these deaths, like Noah's, come from people who are not habitual users. Some are young people experimenting for the first time, unaware of the dangers that lie in a single pill or powder. They're not addicts. They're not seeking a high. They're often just caught in a moment by peer pressure or curiosity. But with synthetic opioids, that one moment can be fatal. And it was. I stand before you today as a grieving parent, but also as someone who believes in the power of change. I believe that we can and we must take action to save lives. This crisis of synthetic opioids, it's not going to disappear. It requires each of us to step up and do our part, whether that means advocating for better policies, supporting those in recovery, or simply having the difficult conversation about drugs and addiction with our loved ones. We all have a role to play. Today, we remember those we lost, including Noah, and we honor their memory by fighting for a future where no more lives are needlessly taken by this epidemic. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can save lives. Thank you.
Words really can't express my gratitude for you being willing to come. It takes a lot of courage to share Noah's story with us tonight. To be open is so powerful. So thank you very much for doing that. And also, it's a wonderful way to ensure his memory and to honor his memory. So thank you again. So let me now introduce you to our panel of experts. First of all, starting over at the left, we have Jeff Beaver. He is our Drug Trafficking Bureau Chief at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. So it's his unit that's responsible for prosecuting the individuals who would bring the poison into our community. Next, we have Kenny Sylvia, who works in the Neighborhood Enforcement Team, or NET team, with the Phoenix Police Department. Then we have Sarah Grotto, the Chief Programs Officer at Not My Kid. You know, in addition to her professional role, she brings a personal perspective as someone in recovery. And finally, we have Austin Moreland, Division Chief of Emergency Medical Services for the Phoenix Fire Department. And I'll start by asking some questions, but we will have time at the end of this for questions from the audience members. So with that, Austin, what is fentanyl? What does it do to our bodies, and why is it so addictive?
Yeah, so I think, as it's been mentioned, the best way to think about it is it's a poison. It's an extremely dangerous poison. What fentanyl actually is a synthetic opioid. So on the medical side, we use it medically for severe pain. It was mentioned by the family earlier, 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And what it does to the body is it depresses the central nervous system, and it depresses the respiratory function of the body. And in high enough doses, it can cause breathing to completely stop. And the reason why it's so addictive is because it can be an instant addiction. The potency is incredibly strong, and it carries with it severe withdrawal symptoms.
So how do overdoses occur then, Austin, with fentanyl? And how often do you get calls for fentanyl overdoses?
Yeah, so I think we also saw with the heat maps, it affects the citywide as an issue. So throughout the entire city, Phoenix Fire, we've got 60 fire stations. All of our fire stations respond on overdoses, unfortunately. They can be accidental, they can be intentional. I think the conversation of curiosity, peer pressure, a lot of those things can contribute to it in addition to the addiction cycle itself.
So it sounds like it's really impacted the workload of your department.
Correct. So we've seen a large increase in our call volume statistically year after year after year. This July, we responded to 20% more overdoses than we did in July of 2023. So all of our trucks, all of our stations are at an all-time high in call volume. And unfortunately, a lot of those calls surround around overdoses, opioid overdoses, fentanyl overdoses.
Kenny, how prevalent is fentanyl in the Deer Valley community?
Well, like we saw in the heat map, I think you can kind of see that the fentanyl is not just prevalent in Deer Valley. It's as prevalent in Deer Valley as it is in any other part of Phoenix. So, just as an example, last night I did a search warrant just on the other side of the freeway from here. Seized fentanyl powder, fentanyl pills, heroin, and then, last week I was in West Phoenix in Maryville doing search warrants, seizing the same exact drugs. So it doesn't really matter what part of the city, or quite frankly, the valley you're in, you're going to find fentanyl, and it's going to be, like we said earlier, pretty much any demographic, any race. There's no discrimination on that at all.
Are there any special challenges that law enforcement faces when dealing with fentanyl-related incidents?
I think Phoenix Fire can probably attest to this as well. It's a major strain on our resources, responding to overdoses specifically. From a manpower standpoint, where patrol has to respond to the incredible amount of overdoses that occur, and the medical calls that Phoenix Fire has to respond to that we go out with them on. But then also, you're talking about it being a poison, and that there's a difference between people that are addicted to the drug and then people that are bringing the poison into our community. So finding the people that bring it into the community, there are so many of them that it's sometimes hard to choose which ones to go after and try to triage which one would be the best one to go after to help mitigate the damage that they're causing based on the volume that they're selling. So there's so many people selling the drug and trafficking it throughout the entire state, but obviously in Phoenix that it's hard to decipher which one to go after first, basically.
Sarah, how is fentanyl commonly used, and how do mental health issues and substance use interact? And what challenges does this pose for treatment?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of pictures of the pills, and counterfeit pills is something that we are trying to raise awareness of. It's not necessarily people seeking out fentanyl pills. They might think that they're purchasing other types of pills and it's laced with fentanyl. And then it's also the powder form. Other paraphernalia to look for are the tin foils with the black marks on it. We tell parents or anybody, if you find something and your gut alarm is going off that maybe you think this is something more, always ask questions, always dig a little bit deeper if you find something and it just seems out of place or off. The question about mental health and addiction, they are intertwined. Somebody who is using substances is at risk of then developing mental health challenges, but also we do have people who are experiencing anxiety, depression, mental health challenges that seek out substances as a way to cope. So there's definitely a relationship there. And when somebody is looking to get treatment and they have substance use and mental health, it's really important that those are treated together. It's really difficult to treat one without addressing the other.
Jeff, tell us about the trends that you're seeing as a prosecutor at the county attorney's office.
I've been a prosecutor for 20 years now, and mostly focusing on prosecuting drug sales crimes for those 20 years. And the popular drugs change as time has gone on. I remember when I first started, crack cocaine was a really popular drug, and now I think Kenny Sylvia can attest that you don't see much crack cocaine cases any longer. It's just not a thing. Then methamphetamine, as was mentioned earlier, became a really big issue. And then we started to see prescription opioids, the OxyContins, and people that were prescribed drugs by doctors and ended up forming an addiction. That eventually led to a rise in heroin. And heroin was used by many people as an alternative to the more expensive OxyContin drugs. And then that led to where we are now with fentanyl, which is also an opiate. And as this graph talks about, we have had a huge increase in fentanyl cases. So in the bureau that I supervise at the county attorney's office, the two major drugs, the two biggest drug threats are fentanyl and methamphetamine.
So I'm looking at this chart. Obviously, it's gone up every year, 2021, 22, 23. And we're, into September of 2024, but this is as of August 31st. So it looks like we're about on par to at least equal last year in terms of the number of cases relating to the possession or sale of fentanyl. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, it looks like we're gonna match 2023. That's the trend.
Yeah. How much does fentanyl cost?
It's cheap. It's something that Officer Sylvia can talk about it as well, but what we're seeing in the cases we prosecute is people that are buying it for $1 to $3 a pill. But if you're buying in bulk, you could get it for a heck of a lot less than that. It just matters of economics. You could get it for less than $1 a pill if you're buying enough in bulk. So it's an extraordinarily inexpensive drug to purchase.
Sarah, how did fentanyl become so popular? And is it combined or contained in other drugs as well?
Yeah, I think just how cheap it is one of the big reasons why it became so popular. We've talked about how it can be combined with other drugs, either knowingly or unknowingly. Another reason why it's so popular is it's easily accessed by teens, so they can get it from friends, they can even purchase it online through different apps.
Kenny, do you encounter instances where drug use or addiction leads to people committing other types of crimes to sustain their addiction?
Yeah, I think at like an entry level, drug user that's addicted, the biggest thing you're going to see related to that is going to be property crimes, vehicle burglaries, residential burglaries, where they're breaking into people's property in their homes to steal items that is going to sustain their addiction so they can pay for it. So we do see an increase in property crimes that are related to drug users, but then also violent crimes, because there is a cartel element that's here that within that world there's conflicts, and that's very violent. So there could be you see drive-by shootings, homicides that are related to drug deals that have gone bad, and then all the way down to just teenagers meeting up at a park because they made a deal on social media to make a purchase and something went wrong, and next thing you know, somebody's dead. So it's a wide range of crimes that are associated. It's not just the victims that die from the usage, it's the people that die from the handling and the transporting and the selling of it, and then the innocent people that are caught up in between all of that.
So Kenny, in what ways can the community support law enforcement in terms of your efforts to address the fentanyl crisis?
The biggest thing would be awareness. I think if everyone's aware of, you saw some photos of here, what it looks like. If many of you haven't seen it before, just being aware of what the pills, how tiny they are, how easily they can just look like a regular prescription pill that somebody might have. I think if you're in your community and you see tinfoil on the ground in like common areas by parks and things of that nature, you'll kind of be able to recognize that as not just a piece of trash, but actually drug paraphernalia, and maybe people are using it out in the open. And so if you're at a park and you see that, or if you're at a workplace and you see it, that maybe somebody nearby is using it, and you want to kind of be aware of the risk that puts other people at that maybe don't know what it is, like kids.
Jeff, where's fentanyl coming from, and what are some methods that traffickers are using to get it into our community?
Well, where it's coming from is it's big business from Mexican drug trafficking organization, from cartels. I mentioned earlier that we went from OxyContin pills to heroin to fentanyl. All of that is based on making money. There was the Mexican cartel, you can think of it as a large-scale business selling poison, and the rise of heroin was because they could make heroin cheaper and provide people that were addicted to opioids with that drug. And then they discovered that using fentanyl, they could make that even cheaper than heroin. You don't need to grow any poppy plants. You can just have the precursor chemicals. Those typically they shipped over to Mexico from China. That's where the precursor chemicals originate, and then it's manufactured in Mexico. We've seen photographs of the pills in pill form, the M on one side and the 30 on the other. But that's the pharmaceutical stamping from OxyContin, and those are almost exclusively, we've learned, pressed in Mexico. So it's in that pill form as it comes across the border into our country. Being that we're here in Arizona, we are on the front lines of mass amounts of drugs coming into the country. And cartels, being a big business of very intelligent people, are going to find any way they can to get the drugs across the border, through ports of entry, through people that have agreed to transport drugs across the border to make some extra money. As the county attorney knows, we've prosecuted people who have dual citizenship, who have crossed the border for the purpose of bringing drugs up into Maricopa County. There was a pair of sisters that were prosecuted last year that were transporting large duffel bags that had 750,000 fentanyl pills inside of these duffel bags. They were doing it to make a little extra money for their family. Cartels will take advantage of people who are in that financial need, have them take the risk, walk it through the desert, whatever it may be to get the drugs into the country and into a place like Phoenix, which is sort of a hub for transportation across the rest of the country.
So Austin, what trends have you heard of with other drugs like methamphetamine?
Yeah, so the two most dangerous drugs to the body are definitely methamphetamine and fentanyl. And now, unfortunately, we know that drug overdoses kill more people than vehicle accidents, guns, and falls combined. Meth, completely different drug. There's uppers and downers. Meth would be an upper, so sometimes to combat meth, people might be up for 2 or 3 days, and as a result of that, now they're trying to use an opioid or fentanyl or something to help their body wind down, to help slow down the effect. So everybody in life is struggling to keep a balance. We see a lot of people that are struggling with this balance of drug addictions and how to keep a level that they can function on, going in between uppers and downers, meth and fentanyl.
Kenny, how are teens getting a hold of fentanyl, and what are some slang terms or street names associated with fentanyl, or symbols that parents can and educators should be aware of?
So teens are able, I think we all know teens are on social media a lot, as are adults, but social media is a big place where you can get fentanyl pills and you can get fentanyl powder, pretty much any drug you want. So like when we do investigations on net, a lot of it stems from social media, where people are posting openly that they have drugs for sale, and we work on identifying them from their social media profile and then locating them within the city and doing surveillance on them and doing search warrants. So having done social media investigations, you can actually see how easy it is to just message a stranger, tell them that you have money, and come up with a meeting location and simply meet up and buy drugs. It's not like, in the old days, like when Jeff was talking about, crack cocaine in the 80s and early 90s and stuff, where you had to go out on a street corner late at night, like this like Hollywood concept of having to go out and buy from some shady person on a corner. You don't have to do that. You can literally do it like you're making a Facebook Marketplace deal to pick up a couch, and you just meet at a spot and exchange the money and on your way. So there's social media, but then it's also people that you know. I would say that's probably the biggest, is some people are addicted to it, and then they know somebody that knows somebody, and because it's so prevalent and it's so cheap, it's really not that hard to find somebody that knows somebody who has some. So all you gotta do is ask, and you can find it and buy it for, like Jeff was saying, I mean, right now you can get pills on social media for 35 cents if you buy like 1,000 or more. And then if you're on the street and you're just buying it, it's, on the high end, maybe like $1. So it's really cheap because there's an abundance of it. And from people that I've spoke to, of all ages, not just teens, but all ages, they say that it's hard to not do it because it's right in front of you all the time. So.
I'm looking at these pictures up here. Have you, as a law enforcement officer, seen any changes in the appearance or frequency, or I guess volume of fentanyl that people are possessing?
Yeah, so the traditional fentanyl pill, the round blue pill that says M30 on it, that really hasn't changed. There's been some variations. I think like the end of 2022 to the beginning of 23, there was some colored fentanyl pills. So it still had the M30 imprint on it, but it was like all different colors. They called them Skittles. That's kind of gone away. That fizzed out. I've seen a really large increase lately in fentanyl powder. So it kind of looks like cocaine, but the rock is like super dense. And it's ingested the same way as they smoke fentanyl pills. You put on a piece of tinfoil and you heat it up, and then you use like a straw or some other type of cylindrical device to inhale the smoke. They do the same thing with the powder, but I've seen more people overdosing from the powder than the pills. So it's definitely more potent. And as far as like other drugs, the meth is still a major problem, but it pales in comparison to fentanyl.
Sarah, what are some warning signs that your child is struggling with substance abuse? And after talking about that, can you talk about some of the ways that Not My Kid works to support teens in recovery?
Yeah, so some warning signs to look out for, and I always like to preface this by saying you know your kids the best. But some things that we look for are, number one, the eyes. The eyes will show a lot if they are glossy, if they're red, if the pupils are really big or pinpoint. Another thing to look for is, like on here, mood swings, if they're sleeping a lot or not sleeping at all, if they're eating a lot or not eating at all. And then obviously if you find paraphernalia or something in their phone or anything that might kind of raise that concern, I would definitely start asking questions and maybe start looking for some additional support.
And let's say we do have teens that are trying to get over the addiction. How does
Yes.
Not My Kid work with that?
So at Not My Kid, we do have treatment services. So in addition to our prevention programs, where we go out and do education stuff, we also have an early intervention program for teens that are struggling with kind of early use. And then we have kind of higher levels of care, individual counseling, family counseling, up to intensive outpatient programs, which is multiple times in the week. If we have a family where they actually need an even higher level of care, we have staff at our campus that work with families to get them connected to inpatient treatment centers. We have, referral partners and contacts all over the valley. So if that is ever the case and resources are needed, you can always contact Not My Kid, and we'll work with you to make sure that you get the help that you need.
Austin, what are signs that somebody is having an overdose? And if we see that, what should we do?
Yeah, so as a student or a parent or a friend, the acronym that we like to teach is BLUE. So the first part, the B, stands for breathing. Usually in an overdose, you have shallow breathing. It can become erratic. You could have gurgling, or there could be no breathing at all. The L stands for the lips. So you would look at the lips, and if you see the lips are changing color, or the fingernails are changing color, they're becoming blue, that's because there's a lack of oxygen to the brain. So that's the L. The U stands for unresponsiveness. So we'd like you to attempt to either verbally or physically stimulus the patient to see if there's any type of response to pain or to verbal. And then the E stands for the eyes, like Sarah mentioned. In an opioid overdose, you'll see pinpoint pupils, and pinpoint pupils are a clear tell sign. That's like the window into the brain. That's a key indicator that you could have an opioid overdose. So what you should do, the fire department, we like to work in protocols and guidelines. If you're seeing any of these signs of an overdose, the first thing you should probably do is make sure that it's safe for you to be there. If it's not safe for you to be there, you should probably remove yourself. But as soon as you establish that it's safe for you to be there, I'd start trying to arouse whoever you think is overdosed with some type of verbal or tactile stimuli. I would call 911 as soon as possible. We would hope that after tonight, people are armed with Narcan. And if you've called 911, we have a response time, and it's going to take us anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes to arrive. So we would like Narcan to be administered. Fentanyl, because of the strength of it, sometimes it takes more than 1 dose of Narcan. Usually it takes about 1.5, 2 doses of Narcan. So give a dose of Narcan after you call 911. If after 3 minutes you don't see any changes to the breathing or the lips or the level of consciousness, then give a second dose of Narcan. It's always good to roll people into a recovery position. Narcan, when it comes to an overdose, it can cause vomiting. So anything that's going to protect the airway, if the patient was to vomit, they wouldn't aspirate it. They'd be able to maintain their own airway.
What is Narcan?
Yeah, so Narcan, also called naloxone, its best form is in this nasal spray, which is 0.4 milligrams, and it's going to reverse the effect of an opioid overdose. So it's going to dry up all the receptors in the brain that are being impacted by the opioid, and it's going to return the breathing back to a normal state.
Is this something that I should keep in my home?
So if for any reason you're seeing warning signs of anybody who lives within your house, then I would absolutely keep it in your house. The only problem with it being in your house is if the overdose occurs anywhere other than your house, you might not have it on you. So it's probably a good idea to have Narcan at home. And then Narcan is temperature sensitive, so it loses its strength when it's exposed to temperatures over 100 degrees. So probably nothing is safe in your vehicle, but keeping it in your vehicle might affect the potency and the strength of Narcan. So keeping it in your house is good. Keeping it on you is also a good thing. If you have a purse, a backpack, a fanny pack, it might be helpful to have it in more than one place.
Sarah, where can we get Narcan, and what are some other local resources to get it?
Yeah, so I mean, we have this awesome QR code up here where you can kind of go to that website and be able to find Narcan near you. There are places all over the valley that do carry it. At Not My Kid, we do carry it, so if you ever wanted to stop by, you can pick up some free Narcan. I think we've discussed a lot of other public spaces can carry it, so honestly, if you just Google, where can I get Narcan near me, you could find a place, and there's a high chance that it'll be free. It is also available over the counter too.
Jeff, what is the Good Samaritan law? Do we have one of those in Arizona?
We do. The Good Samaritan law is legislation that was passed here in Arizona that protects people from prosecution if they are reporting an overdose, if they're trying to get help. So the thing to always remember is that if you or someone you are with is having a medical emergency, an overdose, what the Good Samaritan law says is that you cannot be prosecuted. You cannot be prosecuted for the drug possession, and we want to encourage everyone to call for help.
So if you and a friend are using drugs together, so you both have drugs that you are possessing, and your friend starts to have an overdose, you can call, and we will not, and we cannot prosecute you.
We will not and cannot. That's right. That's the entire point. We want people to call for help. Don't be thinking about legal problems. That's the last of our concerns in that moment. You need to call for emergency help.
Austin, what trends have you observed in the demographics of people that are suffering fentanyl overdoses in Phoenix?
Yeah, so we see on the screen that it affects males at a greater rate than it affects females, but we know that it affects everybody within our community. So I think the increase is that originally we thought maybe this would be associated with people who'd been incarcerated or lower incomes. Now we're seeing that it's probably community-wide. We actually see that the largest number of deaths probably fall within this age frame of like 35 to 45, which is kind of surprising, but I think there's a component to it that has to deal with the fact that it's for severe pain, and that's when sometimes pain starts catching up to you as you get a little bit older in life.
Well, wait till you're 50, almost 57,
Can I say something real quick about the Narcan too? Like, I should have mentioned this earlier, and I apologize for not. If you were to give me a dose of Narcan right now, it wouldn't do anything bad to me.
Okay.
You cannot hurt somebody with a dose of Narcan. So if you think it's an overdose and you give Narcan, there's a chance that that's going to fix the overdose and restore the breathing. If it's not an overdose, though, you are not going to cause any harm or any damage by giving the Narcan.
That's really good to know.
It just won't have any drugs to dry up.
That's really good to know. So if something else is wrong with them medically, you're not hurting them.
Yep. And sometimes just in the fire department, we give Narcan just to rule things out, just because we know it doesn't hurt people. Maybe it'll have an effect, maybe it won't.
Sarah, what advice do you have for people who are either wanting to prevent opioid and fentanyl use, or they're wanting to get help?
Yeah, so I wish that I had a magic answer to help parents, 100% feel confident that their child is protected. There are some, strategies out there that we can share. On this slide, just real quick, it has a graph about that brain chemistry, and I think that's an important piece of the conversation when we're talking about why people use substances and the insanity behind addiction and why it can be really difficult for somebody in the midst of an addiction to stop using and to stay in recovery. So we have kind of this beginning of the graph where it's just like those highs and lows that we experience in our brain chemistry and all of those chemicals. You know, we have these all throughout the day and all throughout the week where, you know, sometimes something good happens and then maybe we're having like a bad day or a bad part of the day. And then you'll see when somebody uses a substance, it actually spikes that brain chemistry so they feel like an all-time high. That is one of the reasons why somebody who maybe is experiencing a low, you know, whether it is a mental health challenge or something, and they use a substance and all of a sudden they feel all of these happy chemicals, all of these good feelings, and then they feel amazing, and then shortly after, they feel a low like they've never felt before. And so, you know, logic dictates, well, I took this and I just feel great, I feel really bad right now. So then they seek out the substance again to feel great, but you'll notice that next great feeling is not as high as that first one. And then subsequently it keeps getting a little bit lower and lower to where the person using their baseline is well below what an average brain chemistry baseline is. And so that's where we hear the saying, I'm just using to feel normal. Like I have to have this just to function and feel normal. So if somebody was in this and they wanted to you know, stop using, that's where we really do have to seek out those supports and those social supports. It is really, really difficult to do by yourself. It can also be really dangerous to do by yourself. It takes a while for a person using, for their brain chemistry to get back to that normal regulating spot. And so if we have somebody and they stop using for maybe a couple of days or a week and they have this feeling, I'm supposed to feel better, like I'm not using anymore, they're not gonna feel okay for a really long time. It's gonna suck, to be honest. And that's where they really need to be able to rely on the people in their life, maybe even get some sort of medical assisted treatment to help get them through, because it could take months and even up to a year or 2 years before a person's brain chemistry can recover from drug use. So that's something really important, that recovery is hard, but it is really possible, and that's something at Not My Kid that we're really big advocates of. When it comes to preventing this use, I think the biggest thing for parents, I'm so happy there's so many people here, take this information, but talk to your kids and don't talk at them. Ask them questions and then just listen. Like, just sit there and listen. I think parents are really good at talking, but they're not as good at listening. So I would ask them, what do you know about fentanyl? What have you heard? Have you ever been offered anything? Do any of your friends, you know, use it? Have they ever been offered? What would you do if you were at a party and somebody was using? What would you say if somebody offered this to you? Come up with a safety plan. Let them know what your expectations are. If they are in a situation and somebody's using or they're offered, practice with them before they're in that situation of how they're going to handle that situation, and then make sure that they know about the Good Samaritan law, what to do if somebody is overdosing, to call 911. It's so important that we have these conversations while they're not in a crisis situation, because they're more likely to remember it if we talk about it when their brain is in a calm state. In the safety plan, also just make sure that they know, no matter what, nothing that they do or say is ever going to change your love for them or change how you're going to show up for them, that their safety is always number one. Teens are, you know, when they're in those situations, they're just really afraid of getting in trouble. They're really afraid of what are my parents going to say? Am I going to get grounded? All of that. We have to make sure that they know that's not what's important in that moment, that it is their safety. And then, I mean, the other thing that we're also a really big advocate of is looking at the phone use with teens. And I know phone use kind of seems a little off base because we're talking about fentanyl, but looking at how much screen time are our kids getting? What is that also doing to their brain? What are they being exposed to? And how can we put the phones down and just connect as a family and connect in person, and getting our teens used to connecting more in person and back to community.
You know, and would you agree with this, that you're not going to put an idea in their head just by bringing the topic up? kids are coming across this. It's so prevalent. You saw that from those heat maps. It is prevalent throughout the valley, throughout the country. You're not going to suggest something to them that they're not encountering. And even if they haven't seen it yet, the chances are very high that they will. And so talk to them. Don't hesitate. You agree with that? Sarah?
Yes.
Yes. So those are the questions that I have for tonight's panelists. And let's give them a round of applause, first of all, just for... And also, a big round of thank you to our wonderful vendors out there who've set booths up outside as well. So visit that when you go out. But we're going to open this up for questions right now. And is there a microphone that they should come up to? Or okay, we have a microphone back there. So, you know, if you need it, I see a question over here. Actually, I see several questions.
I have two questions. The first being, do we have any data specific to schools, high schools in particular? Is there certain schools, certain districts that's experiencing more use or exposure to these types of drugs? And then the second one, noticing that there's 5,400 cases, but what's the conviction rate?
Kenny, do you want to talk about
Yeah, my children both go to Mountain Ridge, and I'm curious to know, are there any cases there? How do I find out about that? Because it's juveniles, and we can't learn about that, but other than my children telling me, you know, somebody overdosed today, I don't know, they're I don't even know if they realize what that means. So,
Okay. Can you address that part?
I don't think there's a specific school district or a particular high school in general that is, you know, there's more fentanyl overdoses or fentanyl possessions than another one. You know, if you look at that heat map, like because of the freeways, but that's just because that's where a lot of the arrests are taking place, and that's where it's being documented, but that's just because it's where it's moving. And it goes in, you know, it doesn't really, it's not specific to a specific school. If you want to know what's happening at your child's school, that would be up to the administration to, you know, tell you about what's going on there because, you know, especially if it's like an overdose, a lot of times there'll be a medical call where Phoenix Fire will go out, and it's not necessarily a police matter every single time. And so to say like what is happening at a particular school is a little hard to say, but that would have to come from the administration of the school to tell you what happened that day and why fire came out and what the outcome was.
Yeah, I can tell you just from having done these throughout the valley, these fentanyl forums, I mean, we've heard stories at every corner of Maricopa County, and it is not a respecter of race or socioeconomic factors at all, or where they live. It is across the valley. And then your second question was conviction rate. So Jeff?
Yeah, the statistic that was up there, those are charged cases by our county attorney's office. And anytime we charge a case, it's gone through a screening process. We're looking to see what our evidence is. And so our conviction rate is going to be very high. I don't know what the number particularly is going to be, but it's a very high rate once we charge that case because we've already looked at the evidence and determined that we do have a reasonable likelihood of conviction, which is a charging standard that we use. And so for those cases, it'll be a very high number of those will end up in convictions.
To build off of what Jeff was saying, to give you an idea, since we don't have an exact number, I've been on the neighborhood enforcement team for 5 years, so we've been primarily doing drug investigations for that period of time. When I did my first search warrant in 2020, that search warrant I had 50 pills that I seized. And last year we did a search warrant and we got 500,000. So the cases from beginning to now where that increase has been extremely obvious, I've never had to go to trial and testify on any of those cases. They've all been convicted and taken plea deals of some sort. So anywhere from a simple possession charge where they have less than 100 pills all the way up to 500,000 or more. I mean, our squad alone last year got 2 million fentanyl pills, and that was 5 people. The year before that, we did 1.2 million fentanyl pills. And that's not even including like several hundred pounds of methamphetamine and guns. But all those cases have been convictions for us from the police department standpoint. When we submit a case to the county attorney, it's been I haven't gone to trial on any of them. They've all gone to prison, and even first-time offenders have been getting several years in prison. Felony.
So there are different classes of felonies. Personal use of a narcotic drug, which fentanyl is one, is a class 4 felony. Selling fentanyl is a class 2 felony, which is more severe. And to Kenny's point about the number of pills that have come into our community changing, I remember 7 years ago, when fentanyl was first really starting to become a thing, we try and classify who are the really serious drug dealers because they're the most deserving of the highest forms of punishment. And when we saw someone with 1,000 pills, we thought, oh my goodness, this is the big one. And now 1,000 pills is someone that is a low-level, street-level dealer who may be selling drugs to be able to afford to pay for his own addiction. So I told the story of the 750,000 pills. Those are the large seizures now. There have been multiple seizures of over 1 million pills at a time. So what we've seen is the prices are low because the numbers of pills in the community are so high.
My question is, how can we protect students and from trying to get a hold of this poison fentanyl drug?
Well, I think the same thing would apply that we are saying to parents. So if you're a teacher or an administrator in the school, you're going to know your students the best and the way they behave, and some of the indicators that we talked about, behavior-wise, like signs of depression, or we call it nodding off, where they're still upright, but look like they're asleep. Things like that. So if you start seeing behavior in the classroom or in the school, and it looks like somebody's, has been using drugs, specifically fentanyl, then that would be something that you want to be aware of, and then address that to see if they're using and get them the proper help they need. But you can't control what happens once they leave here. So I think it's an awareness campaign. We talked about earlier. How many recovery facilities can you build? But if you don't have an awareness campaign, it doesn't matter. You're just always going to fill them up. So I think the schools need to have an awareness campaign where administrators, teachers are explaining all the stuff we talked about so that people are aware of it. And so when these kids in any age, but probably in high school mostly, where they go to parties and they're socializing and they see either the use or somebody showing the signs of usage, they know how to address it, and they could tell somebody like, hey, my friend so-and-so looks like they're using fentanyl, they told me they're using it, what can we do to help them? And then get the proper resources to assist that person.
So
See a question back. Do you see a question up here? Oh, okay.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I go to high school at Liberty, right over here, and I was wondering if one of the things they talk about the most is vaping and smoking, because that's just the really big thing right now. Can fentanyl be put in any of that? And also, does fentanyl show up in schools, or does it only happen outside of school?
What was the question about the vaping?
Can fentanyl be in
show up
vapes?
in vaping or smoking? Like, is it laced in that or anything? I don't know.
Personally, I haven't seen fentanyl in vapes. It's mostly marijuana products and things of that nature, but like THC. But I haven't seen fentanyl in any form other than like pill, powder, and then like smoked. So it's not, you don't see it like injected. You don't see it smoked in like a cartridge. It's usually just on the tin foil. And then what was the second part of your question?
Does it show up while you're in school, or is it only like deals that happen outside of school?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Now, I can add just a tiny bit to that. I have gone to trainings from DEA that have talked about some instances, albeit they're not super common, where there has been fentanyl put into things like liquids for vaping. It is something that could be done. It's available to be done. But like what we're talking about here, the most common forms is going to be in the blue M30 pills or in the powder form that Officer Sylvie's been talking about. But that's not to say that it couldn't be done.
On the fire side, we respond to schools sometimes for medical emergencies. and sometimes we go to overdoses, but usually we see younger people on the weekends and at night, and probably when they should be in bed. That's normally when we see younger people that are experiencing overdoses.
So I had a question that was close to that question. So when I read about fentanyl and like it being cut into like a joint or whatever, it talks about that the heat would destroy any efficaciousness or like the high. So is it being cut into bud leaves for a joint, or is it like in wax pens that they're able to smoke with like electronic type of cartridges?
So because fentanyl is, like, especially the powder form, like, it's extremely hard to see if you were to grind it up. So say police respond to a overdose, 9 times out of 10, there's multiple drugs on scene. So, somebody's overdosing and it's like, okay, there's fentanyl pills, there's some meth paraphernalia. What did they ingest? Is it marijuana? Was it laced in the marijuana? It's really hard to say. And unless you're sitting there opening up, the joints that maybe are there, it would be almost impossible to tell if it was laced with that, other than just seeing the actual drug itself in the open. So.
I'm really just asking as the social worker of this school, wanting to get correct information to the kids and not to just scare them, just to scare them, but to say that, guys, it can be in something as insidious, as.
Well, like I said earlier, it's transitioned from pills. I've seen mostly a transition from pills to powder. Powder gives you more flexibility on ingestion. So the most common form is smoking it, but there's nothing stopping somebody from putting it into a vape pen. Like Jeff said, it is possible. It's just maybe not that common right now, and the trends are always changing. Like I said, in 2022, there was colored pills that fizzed out after 6 months, and now it's just back to the blue pills. Now we're from blue pills to white powder. So you could sprinkle white powder in a joint. You could put powder in a vape pen. You could put powder in food, or just like you do with marijuana. Marijuana, if you think about it, is just a green plant, but there's edible. You've heard about brownies and gummies and all this other stuff, right? You get from the THC, the extract. So you take a pill and now you got powder. What can you put that powder in? So, if you wanted to tell that to students here, that would be a factual statement to make.
And just a little bit on that, because students have access to the same information online. The science does say when fentanyl is heated to a certain point, I know what you're talking about, where it is no longer necessarily active, and that's where people are saying if you smoke it or vape it, it's not necessarily a danger. I would never say that, just because I don't think we should have the message that vaping is safe in any way. But even if there was fentanyl laced in a joint, it's not just what is on fire that is reaching that point, but it could be inhaled, it could still reach the lips, and that's true if it was in a vape too. When you're vaping, sometimes you get the liquid in your mouth, and so there's still dangerous ways, even if it was laced in there. But if you look online, the science does say that it is technically, scientifically, not going to happen that way.
Hi, how much time is there to use this after somebody's OD? What's the window?
Yeah, so the sooner you use it, the better. That's why as soon as you call 911, I would get straight to using it, especially knowing that you can't hurt anybody if you were wrong. If it wasn't an overdose, you're not going to do any harm to them. Unfortunately, sometimes for us, we carry Narcan. About 70% of the overdoses we respond on, we administer Narcan. But the brain is fragile, and if you go 5 minutes without oxygen to your brain, you can have irreversible effects. So the sooner you can use it, the better. There will come a point in time where it will no longer be able to have the effect because it'll be too late.
Okay, my question is, can somebody else get a contact high? So let's say there's students or people at a party and somebody is doing fentanyl and smoking it and ends up passing out or whatever, and they're suspected overdose. If there's no Narcan on site, there could be people there who will start, chest compressions, maybe do CPR. If you put your mouth on somebody else's mouth that had just smoked it, is there any way that that person could it could transfer over, like the symptoms or the drug itself. I mean,
Yep. So for the tail end of that question, now we recommend people don't even do mouth-to-mouth because it can cause a barrier. It can cause someone to have worries or concerns about their own safety. So I wouldn't even recommend mouth-to-mouth. I would just say if you have Narcan, administer it. If you need to do CPR, compress the chest as fast and as hard as you can for as long as you can, and if you need to, switch out with another person. But for the tail end of your question, I don't know about the contact high portion of it, but I probably wouldn't encourage anybody to do mouth-to-mouth. I would just do continuous chest compressions.
For the contact high part, I would say, like when I've done search warrants, I've gone into like small rooms that people have just smoked a bunch of fentanyl pills, and it's so thick that it looks like a cloud in the room. And I've gone in there and like I haven't gotten high, but the fentanyl gets ingested through mucous membranes. So if you go into like a vehicle where somebody was smoking powder and that powder is airborne, and you breathe it in or your mouth's open and it gets into your mouth, and you can get, you can actually overdose from the airborne version of it. So it depends on the form of it. If someone's just smoking pills and it's burnt, you're going to smell it really strong, but you're probably not going to get high from it. But if you are in an area where there's powder and it's airborne, that could be really dangerous.
My question is, obviously we were talking about, ingesting via a pill. Should kids be worried to ingest it any other way? I mean, are we talking like candy being laced with fentanyl or anything like that?
What's the question?
Candy
I think she
being
said
laced
candy.
with fentanyl.
Oh, candy?
Is there any other forms of fentanyl that kids should be worried about other than smoking?
I think like I said, for kids, I think the easiest form and the most common form is going to be pills because it's easily concealable in your pocket. I mean, I think the powders, as a kid, it's a little more complex, a little more obvious, and you're going to want to, if you know you're not supposed to have it, you're going to be trying to sort of keep it concealed. I haven't seen candy or anything like that, like laced with fentanyl. I haven't even seen people like swallow the pills. I've only seen them smoking them. I've heard of people that have, not that I've seen, but I've heard of people that have swallowed them, and you don't get the same kind of effect. So it's just not really ingested that way. And as far as being laced in like food and stuff, I'll go back to what I said about the powder. Now that powder is really popular, that can go into anything. So it just depends on who has it and what they put it in.
I have, excuse me, 2 questions, please. Number 1 would be a person who takes a pill knowing that it's fentanyl, but misjudges the potency, versus a person who thinks he or she is taking something else and doesn't know fentanyl is in it. Can you put a number or a percentage on calls? How many are accidental versus how many knew what they were doing?
Most of the calls that we respond to, I would say probably like north of 95% they know it's fentanyl. They're fentanyl addicts, and so they knew that. It's pretty rare to find somebody that overdosed on a pill that didn't know what it was. They may have, they know it's either whether they thought it was an actual prescription pill that they don't have, but they don't have a prescription for it. That runs a risk if you're taking a pill that is prescription only that you don't have a prescription for. And then there's that person that's addicted that smokes multiple, 50 fentanyl pills a day that finally caught up to them and, they overdosed because they just smoked too much. The majority of it, I would say, is the latter part of that, where they're addicts and they know what they're doing.
Thank you. And the second part of the question is, are there some common prescription drugs that more typically might be laced with fentanyl than others?
Percocet and oxycodone.
Mm-hmm.
What would the consequences for your average 15 to 18-year-old high schooler look like for selling fentanyl on school grounds?
What is the consequences?
Yeah.
For somebody under 18 selling?
Well, we have a juvenile crime section, of which I don't work in that section, but our focus for juveniles is always going to be rehabilitation. I don't know the specifics of exactly how that kind of case would be handled. I can tell you that for adults, and we have a lot of young people, 18, 23-year-olds, 25-year-olds that are selling fentanyl, what we try and do as a prosecution strategy is figure out who this person is. We look at criminal history. We look at the number of pills that they were selling to determine what their level was. How much damage were they causing in the community? Were they selling only a very small number of pills to support their own habit? And is it in the best interest of the community for us to try everything we can to get that drug addiction treated in some way? Can we put them on probation? Can we get them into a treatment program? For people that are on the opposite end of the spectrum, and they are trafficking in hundreds of thousands of fentanyl pills that are causing all this damage and destruction, well, it's really a discussion of how much prison time should they get based on their criminal history and based on the specifics of their crime.
I see two people here who have their hands up for quite a while, so we'll get those two questions, and then out of respect for everyone's time, we'll just leave it then for people to come up and talk to our panel afterwards. So, get those two.
I'm a student here at Goldwater, and I was wondering how we, as a community, as a school, could help students with their addictions and anything at all, just smoking, vaping, stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Something that we believe in 100% and Not My Kid is empowering teens to help teens. You are probably going to be the first ones to hear or see something in your peers, and so anything that you can do around hosting trainings on how to respond, raising more awareness among your peers on the Good Sam law, Narcan, how to use it. I think that teens should know how to use Narcan if you are at a party. And if you want, come talk to me afterwards, because Not My Kid can come in and actually help if you do have a group here wanting to do more or learn more to do something. Not My Kid can come in and support that. So let's talk afterwards.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, sir? Okay. All right. That question, sir, right there.
I'm just curious about, we got exposure, major exposure in the cities within the public of doing the fentanyl out in public. And I'm sure a lot of kids, or even people, are curious about what these people are doing at the bus stops, or even out in public in general, around stores and in the community. Is there any insight of tackling that part of it? To where we, or if they're not, there used to be a time when people didn't want to do stuff out in public because they would be worried about the police. And at this present time, they're not concerned about the police because they know they're almost not going to be bothered or messed with. They feel very comfortable and open with doing this kind of thing out in public.
So that issue goes back to the volume. So because there's so much fentanyl pills and there's so many people that are addicted to it, that's why you're seeing it at all the places you described, and they're doing it in the open. I think it's become, unfortunately, a part of I hate to say a norm, but it's become so prevalent that even on people everyday routine, going to the store, pulling into a shopping center where they normally go grocery shopping, and you see somebody on the side of the building with a piece of tin foil, it's oh, well, there's somebody smoking fentanyl pills, and a lot of people are not even calling about it anymore. But due to, a lot of factors, but including police shortage and fire resources, I was talking earlier about the fentanyl overdoses that we respond to, where you have to triage, and also what I was talking about, triaging how we're gonna get these drug dealers that are causing the most damage. So do I go after a guy that's selling 1,000 pills a week, or do I try to locate the guy that's selling 30,000 pills a week? And the guy that's selling 30,000 pills a week is going to be supplying more of those people that are at the stores and the bus stops that you're talking about. And so that's going to be like an area of focus. So, but as soon as you get one and arrest one person and they get prosecuted, another one pops up, and then there's more pills coming across the border. And if something doesn't happen south of Phoenix where our state meets Mexico, then we're not going to have any real significant change, just to be honest, because as long as it keeps coming, it's like trying to eat, drink a bowl of soup with a fork. Like, it's just going to always be there, and you're not going to be able to completely get rid of it. And so, police and fire do as much as we can to respond to those calls, but on top of that, there's all those other crimes that we're responding to, and there's other major issues that Phoenix Fire is responding to. So for someone using at a bus stop, it may take the police department or fire, unless it's a medical emergency, fire is not going to show up. And then for the police department, it could take us a couple hours to get there because of all the other calls that we're taking for crimes in progress and other things. So unfortunately, that's something that has been on the rise. And until we curb the availability of the drug, that's going to be something that is unfortunately going to be out there.
I realize everything that you just said was absolutely true. Is there somewhere where we can go to maybe voice our opinion or get with the city to have this, especially at the bus stops, be alleviated, where if you're not there to take a bus, you can't be there, because we got a lot of people that are
So yeah, I know what you're saying. So you could, I would encourage you to go to city council meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, you're allowed to speak there and tell the city council. If you go online, you can find, based on your address, who your council member is, and you can go down there and ask them specifically. You can find their contact information online, and if you don't have time to go in person, you can email them or call them and explain the issues that you're seeing and ask what's being done about it. We would love to have more police officers to help. As you've seen, we've been hiring nonstop and trying to keep up, but unfortunately, that's been an uphill battle. So I would say it has to be leadership at the city level and awareness within the community to recognize what's happening. And the more people that shed light on the problem, squeaky wheel gets the grease, kind of thing. Okay. But it has to start with, I would say, political leadership.
Okay. I didn't know really how to address. I appreciate your time and efforts and all of this.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure how to, voice everything, because I know there's far other things going far worse than what there is out there in the last 10, 15 years especially.
Yeah.
But thanks for your time.
Thanks for asking that, and thank you to our panelists tonight for answering these questions. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you stop by my office's booth, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office booth, on your way out. Pick up some Narcan. And thank you for attending. The panelists are going to stay up here, so feel free to ask them more questions. And please, please, please share this information with people that you kids. As the motto goes, one pill can kill, but one conversation can save a life. So please make sure you have that conversation.